Good morning to you, Darren Dreger. Hope things are going well. Of course, big week here in Edmonton. Just sports-wise, you got baseball heating up, CFL regular season. Of course, game one of the Stanley Cup final that we're all waiting for and building up for on Wednesday. But I just wanted to get in your thoughts early and not get it out of the way, but really kind of lead in with the Memorial Cup, of course, yesterday, the London Knights. We were talking earlier, perhaps the best... What would you call it, Dave? You had non-professional
professional hockey
entity
team,
or whatever you call it, because that is a hell of a program. And full credit to the Tigers and the players and Coach Willie and what they did. But just your thoughts on the final and the tournament as a whole.
Well, look, I mean, to steal a word from Spit and Chicklets, the London Knights are a wagon. I mean, every single year, this team seems like it's built to not only come through the Ontario League, but obviously, as Dale Hunter talked about post-game, to win the final game, right? It's great when you win your league. And for many, that's what the accomplishment is. That is the badge of honor. You know, you win the Western Hockey League, you're a good hockey organization, no doubt about that. But you do want to be, best against best. And when you look across major junior hockey in Canada, that's what the Memorial Cup represents. So London got the job done, and I was there a year ago when they lost to Saginaw, and many were surprised at that loss. But you could tell that, some of the key players like Cowan, Dickinson a year ago, the job wasn't finished. It's not finished. And, there's a couple of young men who you can just see among the many who participated. Gavin McKenna comes to mind, obviously, with the Medicine Hat Tigers. You can just look into the crystal ball and see that they are going to be influential pieces at the NHL level at some point in the near future. But yeah, I mean, the Hunter brothers don't put together a roster thinking, okay, well, we're in a cycle, and this is the year that we're probably going to have to take a step back. That's not how things are operated in London. They just always find a way, and if it's not through patient development, then they'll make a mega trade and they'll poach from other organizations that are embracing that rebuild, and they'll find a way to get it done. I mean, it's incredible what they've accomplished, not in just the last few years, but in the years since the Hunter brothers took over the Knights program.
Well, and again, I just quickly here, I mean, everybody winning the Stanley. I've never competed for any major honor like these people do, but I've always said, Dreger, the Memorial Cup is probably the toughest trophy to win in sports. When you think of the slog of the season, the playoffs, getting out of that, and then going to this tournament where, if you come in and you're not on your game and you maybe trip a little bit or stumble a little bit, then it's all over. All that hard work goes. So really like a tough war to fight all calendar year to get to this point. And you mentioned building junior teams, the challenge in that as well.
Yeah, and look, again, just gleaning, some of the opinion from those who participated in the Memorial Cup from the London Knights side, and to a man, they talked about how tight that group is, and that can be challenging as well in junior hockey because your top players, Easton Cowan. I mean, there was no guarantee that he was going to be with the London Knights. I mean, he could have found his way in the National Hockey League with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But, that group stays together and probably feed off the disappointment of not winning a year ago, and off they go. I mean, it's one of my favorite events. I wonder how challenging it can be. They string it out over the better part of a week. Like it feels like they can find a way to condense it a little bit. But I say that, and then I'm appreciative of the spotlight that each team gets on a daily basis, right? Because it's nationally televised on TSN, and it's deservedly a big deal. I didn't make it to Rimouski this year. I did go to Saginaw last year. And stayed in Frankenmuth, Michigan, which is not that far from Saginaw.
I remember this whole episode. Yeah.
So if you haven't been there, you should visit it because it's a 12-month of the year Christmas destination, Frankenmuth, Michigan. Next year, it's in Kelowna, as we know.
Yes.
And there's a really good chance that I will reappear at the Memorial Cup next year, almost as likely as the London Knights getting back from the Ontario Hockey League. It's a safe bet.
Yeah, bring the sticks with you too and have a good time.
Darren, we love it when a coach is honest, but Pete DeBoer might be criticized and has been criticized for being overly honest in his comments about Jake Oettinger. We've heard now from Jake Oettinger. What did you think of how that young guy and an extremely talented goaltender played that whole thing?
Yeah, as well as anyone would have expected and maybe predicted. What's the flip side is that, he just exposes the issue that maybe he took in the moment. Because look, it was pretty obvious to anybody watching, and my good friend Ray Ferraro was between the benches, and I confirmed with him when it happened. I'm like, hey, it looked like that pull completely took Oettinger by surprise. And he goes, 100% it did. He was not expecting that. And you had the animated follow-up by Pete DeBoer, like essentially saying, get off the ice, we're making the change. I'm not sure that's exactly what he said, but that's what it looked like. So I will give Jake Oettinger some credit. He expected his role, accepted his role, and his influence in that series, and in particular that game, an elimination game. The fact that he gave up 2 goals on 2 shots, it's a team blame. End of the day, he felt like he needed to make a save and he wasn't able to, and that wasn't the start that the Dallas Stars needed, obviously, in Game 5.
Yeah, it's so. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, talking to you guys once a week, so much stuff, especially at this stage of the season, the Oilers advancing Thursday or whatever it was. And I kind of wanted to get into your tail of the tape moving forward to the final, but it was nice that we could recap a bit of that, because I think you don't know where you're going till you know where you've been. And that series against Dallas, I think, again, losing one, just like they did to the Golden Knights, 2 games in both of those series where one was a goal in milliseconds, the other was a special teams breakdown for 20 minutes. But moving forward here, with the Panthers series, the tail of the tape, this is tight. Like, is it just boiled down to a will to win at this point for the Oilers, and that's the grand difference?
No, I wouldn't say that's the grand difference. But that's an ingredient, right? When you're looking for the recipe, and quickly, just to wrap up the whole Oettinger story, because the takeaway from other managers and hockey people was that Pete did not back off. Post game, he doubled down and he kind of buried the guy in the process. So that was what was surprising, more so than the pull at 2-0. But I am going to segue over, because I think goaltending is as significant a story in this series, and maybe the ingredient that favors the Oilers. And I'm not saying Skinner is better than Sergei Bobrovsky. Don't misunderstand that. What I mean is, look at the hills, no pun intended here, that Edmonton has overcome in the crease. Started with Darcy Kemper, one of the best goaltending stories this season, right? So they get past him in the Los Angeles Kings. Then it's Adin Hill and the Vegas Golden Knights. And then Jake Oettinger is certainly better than Stu Skinner when the series started. So, let's give credit to the goaltender, and that's Skinner, but more so to just the commitment, the structure, the detail work invested by the Edmonton Oilers, and their rebound ability. Every time they faced adversity, in whatever frame that was, and it normally ends with a puck going into their net, there was a bounce back. Within a few minutes, there was a bounce back. And that's very telling, because I am a believer in that you do need to feel how painful it is to lose in the fashion that they did. Game 7 in a tight-fought game, Game 7 in Florida, and you come out short. All right, well, you've got to live with that until this point. And I don't know, you guys probably see and feel the same thing I do. When I watch McDavid and I listen to Draisaitl and I watch Leon and all the other contributing influences that now Edmonton has. So you don't have Zack Hyman, but you've got a spark plug like Arvidsson out there who's hitting, and he's doing everything he can on the forecheck. And you've got Janmark, and you've got Adam Henrique, and you've got Trent Frederick, who, in my opinion, he's just starting now to look healthy, right? Yeah. And that guy can elevate his game physically. And I expect that against the Florida Panthers. So you don't replace Zack with one player, you replace him by committee with that level of physicality. And the offense is going to come from different areas. So why can't Edmonton solve the riddle of Sergei Bobrovsky the way that they did the 3 previous goalie storylines coming in? And I think that they can. And as much as the experience matters in giving Florida the edge as defending Stanley Cup champions, I'm seeing and I'm feeling something different from McDavid and Draisaitl, and to a man who experienced that loss in Game 7 a year ago in Edmonton.
Darren Dreger with us here on the Nielsen Show. Darren, years and years ago, Glenn Sather, there would be people, you'd hear them say, well, how tough can it be to coach Gretzky and that crew? And they skip past the obvious genius of Glenn Sather, and a lot of it was sort of managing personalities. Okay, we're Chris Knobloch now, 2 Stanley Cups in 2 years. What do you believe Chris Knobloch's greatest strength now as a leader of this team? Because you're always, again, going to get but he's got McDavid and Draisaitl, a bit of an asterisk there, but he's a bona fide and very successful NHL coach.
No question about that. Timing for me. And I wouldn't say that gives him the edge over Paul Maurice. Again, Paul Maurice is the defending champ. So, he deserves the respect for that. But try and track the number of changes that Chris Knobloch makes to his lineup over the course of a 3-period game. It's hard. Yeah. He starts, but then he sees something and there's an automatic adjustment. And sometimes that's game dictated. Sometimes that's dictated by what you're seeing and trying to play the matchups and all of that. But he's fearless in his want to just try something. But I would also say this. And I don't think it's a level of inexperience. I think it's a level of trust that he has in Glenn Gulutzan and his staff. He leans on his staff. He really, truly does. And I think Paul does to a point, but end of the day, it's Paul Maurice. If he's doing something, he's doing something. Whatever that is in game, he's just going. And I think that Knobloch probably between periods, pre-game, over the course of the day, would lean on his staff a bit more than Paul Maurice would. But in saying that, he has, again, just this toughness about him in game that maybe I wouldn't expect from a relatively inexperienced coach. And he doesn't seem to wear it post-game or pre-game. He just kind of stays on that level keel. And I think that's important as well. Your players feed off that energy. Yeah. And it's a positive. How many times have we seen the wires touch on Paul Maurice where you get those crazy sound bites, pound their D's so that they have not, we've seen that a million times. And we're going to continue to see it. We'll see it in this series when they face adversity. That is not Knobloch. That's not him at all. He makes sure that he is level-headed so that the bench knows that, okay, let's just stick to our game here and we'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think, too, we you mentioned during the course of a 3-period, all season long, he'll be making some changes or tweak something on a January Wednesday, and we're like, what the hell? But he seems to have gone through every certain single combination of forward groups. I think every defenseman's played with one another during this cup run here. So everything now, it's a slow build to this time of year where if situation specific, he can say, been here, done that. I'm rolling this out and that. You mentioned Hyman earlier as well. I just wanted to touch on your thoughts. It's funny to say, but just how big of a loss is it, especially in a series against a team like Florida, where Hyman was chasing he was going to hit the all-time hits mark for postseason. But again, a healthy Evander Kane by committee here. Connor Brown skating yesterday, but just how seismic is that missing Hyman for this series in particular?
Well, I've been a Zack Hyman fan from the moment, he came into the National Hockey League. Just that intestinal fortitude. He's got that thing that you just can't always put a finger on, and that's will. It's immeasurable in the DNA of Zack Hyman. So we know he's a machine in every sense, and physically for sure, his style would fit in nicely to counter what the Florida Panthers are going to bring. Offensively, we saw him score some real nice, timely goals for the Edmonton Oilers through this playoff run. But, he's obviously there in spirit. And so you can't control what you can't control. And of course, we can talk about it when say, well, if they had Hyman in this situation, maybe it would be different. Well, we don't know that because we know that he's not going to be available. There was some hope when he first went down, and we learned of how serious the injury was and the treatment required and all that. There was still hope, and there maybe still is a glimmer within the organization if this series goes into a 6-7. I don't think so. Those close to him say, no, he's done. So, I'll believe that to be the case. But I have enough belief in Corey Perry, in Evander Kane, the players that I've already mentioned. Do you honestly think that Corey Perry isn't intimately in tune with what his body is telling him and what he knows he has to provide in a 7-game series? And he's going to do it. I'm not sitting here saying that he's going to be the difference maker and the Oilers are going to hoist the Stanley Cup. I'm not bold enough to make that prediction. What I am bold enough to say is that Corey Perry is going to be seen and heard from in this series. There is just no way he's going to let that opportunity pass by. So it's by committee. It's by committee. That's how you replace Hyman.
Darren, I watch, I have been, since he entered the league, a fan of Darnell Nurse, his style of play, his skating ability. And, he has been early in his career kind of a high risk, high return kind of player. And the mistakes when he made them were often, very noticeable.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Darnell Nurse, we don't, outside of the slash on Rupe Hintz, you don't hear his name a lot, at least in negative terms, which tells me that it's a very controlled game he's playing and the benefit of playing with Troy Stecher. You want to talk about where Nurse is at and that duo.
Yeah. And his game is quiet, and that is a really, really good thing. It is. And he's comfortable in the game that he's being asked to play because you can see it in the level of execution. And there were a number of times, whether it was Mason Marchment or whomever it was in that Dallas series, especially after the slash, right, on Rupe Hintz, where, look, Dallas, of course, is going to try and get under the skin of Darnell Nurse, do something to shake him a little bit. And scrum after scrum, he just stood there and didn't crack a smile, just peered forward. There was no response. He stayed in his game. And that's when he's playing that level. Then when he tries to do too much, that's obviously when Darnell gets in trouble. And you could say that about a lot of players, right? So Troy Stecher to me is just one of those interesting commodities. And, to go to this point of the Stanley Cup postseason, you've got to be able to lean on a variety of different options. Normally, we're fixated on goaltending. And look, the Oilers, face that level of adversity again this postseason in goaltending. But Stu Skinner has been true to form, and he's been a terrific story. That comment that Troy Stecher made when it was apparent that Mattias Ekholm was coming into the series, That tells me everything I need to know about Troy Stecher, and I don't know him at all, and everything I need to know about the commitment and level of confidence inside that Oilers room. For him to just flat out say, hey, having Mattias Ekholm, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not quoting him exactly, to have Mattias Ekholm available is great for the team because he's going to give this team its best chance to win. He's better than I am, and he's going to help this club. Come on.
That gets heard in the room, eh? That gets heard in the room. The guys,
oh my gosh. How can it not?
Yeah.
And especially, Dave, the way he was playing, right? The Oilers are obviously a much better team with Mattias Ekholm on the ice. But you could make a case that with Mattias Ekholm on the ice and Troy Stecher available, they're even that much better because he was playing terrific hockey. He was. So for him to just accept that, we didn't expect him to pound his fist and be pissy about it and all of that. No, but to be just that much of a team guy, then I look around the room and I know I've drifted away from Darnell Nurse, but I think that they go hand in hand because of the buy-in that is really hard it's hard to find. And I think that's one of those ingredients that every owner, every general manager searches for, because they think they've got a good team. They believe they've got a top contending team until they don't, because they've been eliminated in round 1 or round 2 of the playoffs. It happens every single year. So just all around good stories in the Oilers dressing room right now.
Darren will be up to our knees in it the next time we speak next week. I really appreciate your time this morning hanging out with Dave and I. When are you in with Ray in the lab next? And any messages for Shoggy when he joins us tomorrow?
No, not really. You know what? It's a Stanley Cup final. I think I'm going to leave. Ryan is like, he's dialed right in now. Like he's watching every move on the ice. He's given us all the intel, all that stuff. So I'm not going to rattle his cage. Let's just let the series get going. Ray and I actually we're going to do another podcast later this morning. So we'll get Ray Ferraro's insights on a number of things, including the golf course, because as you guys know, ESPN isn't doing the Stanley Cup final. So Ray is officially off the clock, aside from some of the work that he's doing on the Ray and Dregs podcast. So he'll be ready, sharp from a golf perspective, but
yes, I'm sure
he'll be bringing it on the pod as well. So look forward to that today.
Thanks so much, Darren. Talk next week. That's
thanks, Darren.
TSN's Darren Dreger once again, brought to you by the Cooks and Boys, our good friends out of Pro-Am Sports.